Fishing with the float is by far and away one of the most effective strategies to catch a fish, whether that be trout, steelhead, salmon, bluegill, whatever. Today, we're in the Idaho backcountry catching big, beautiful, wild rainbows, and this rig is absolutely slamming them. I've been experimenting with a lot of different styles of floats and rigs, and I'd say over the past 5 years, I've really dialed this setup in to the best that it could possibly be, and I'm gonna share that with you guys today. So stay tuned, hope you guys enjoy. There are so many styles of floats. This one right here is a VMC. This is a big, heavy light up float. I'm not a big fan of that one. This right here is called a rocket bobber. This one is very popular, especially for bass fishermen, because it just casts a mile and it's just a single lock at the bottom. That one's okay, not my favorite for rivers. We have your standard fill float. This is just your cheap wood float. This works great on ponds and other places for crappie, but still not my favorite float of all time. We've got a bunch of styles that are like this, and these ones are really nice. These are one of my favorites for rivers and lakes. This one is like a bubble float, so you can actually twist the line on, and that actually helps, basically you can fill it up with water, you can cast it a long ways. Those are really good on lakes. They're still not my favorite all around. Just, I would say a couple months ago, I officially found my favorite float of all time. And that float is the Mustad Addicted Fishing Trout Float. That right there is hands down the best float or bobber, whatever you call it. This is the best one I have found by far. What I like so much about this float is how you can fine tune it. So if you have a really light rig underneath your float, the bobber is gonna sit sideways really, really bad. And what I like about this one is that there's an adjustable weight, and you can actually just move that weight up and down, and now it's gonna sit perfectly up, top to bottom. When you're fishing a river like I am today, you don't want that thing sideways or twirling. You want that thing sitting up and just bobbing like this in the water. And then when a fish takes it, you want it to go straight down or straight to the side or whatever way the fish went. This is hands down the best float. They're only like $2 or $3, so they're not that expensive. Man, guys, hands down, the guys over at Addicted Fishing killed it with this float. Now that we've discussed the float, let's go over the whole entire rig here. So for the rod we are using today, this is the Akuma Guide Select Pro. This is a 7.6 ultralight. For float fishing, I really like a longer rod, especially because you're mending line on the surface, right? You don't want that line to drag that float, because then the second that float drags, your bait is getting an unnatural movement under the water, and it's basically worthless to the fish. So yeah, you want a rod that's longer so you can mend your line easier on the water. It's also the same reason why I'm using braid today. I have a size 1000 reel here. This is a Shimano Stratic, and I have 10-pound braid. I like braid because it floats, so if you're fishing in the river, right, you can get that line to stay on top of the water. You don't want that line sinking, because then the current's gonna push it, and you're not gonna get a good drift. So you want that braid to lay on the top. This is 10-pound, like I said. I think it's Power Pro. There's a lot of good brands out there of braid. But yeah, we got that right there. Now we're gonna be tying our leader from the braid. So I like to use tippet, fly fishing tippet, even though I'm not fly fishing. And the reason why is because they make this stuff super thin. So, I mean, for instance, this is Scientific Angler's 4X, and it's 7.4 pound, and the diameter is like 0.18 millimeters. In like an 8-pound test, basically, and anything else is going to be way thicker than this stuff. So this is a very little detail. It's not necessary, but on picky fish, I really think this makes a difference. They also come in nice little spools, so they can go in your tackle box. So if you need to, restring a leader, you don't have to carry a big old spool of line with you, which is nice. All right, so we're going to take our line, and for this, I like about a 5-foot leader. That's all the line we have left in our tippet spool. Should have checked that before I came on the trip. Typically, you're gonna want a little bit longer of a leader than this, but that is gonna be okay for what we're doing today. These fish aren't too line shy, and the braid is pretty thin anyways. The main concern here is that you don't really want any fluorocarbon above the bobber, and you don't want much braid below the bobber. Obviously, you're gonna have to adjust your rig, as you're fishing. So, if you're fishing a shallow spot, you're gonna have to move your float up. We'll talk about that in a minute here, but it's kind of a general rule of thumb is you don't want a ton of either line above that float. That float is kind of a good spot to indicate where those two lines are switching, in my opinion. All right, so we're gonna tie these two together here. We're gonna tie this with an Albright knot. This is a knot that I think every fisherman should know. It is crucial when tying braid to fluorocarbon or braid to mono. We're gonna get this tied here. Oh man, I don't know if you guys can see behind me, this hole looks so dang good, and it's a perfect hole to use a float setup as well. You wanna cut your tag ends close, but not too close, obviously because you don't want that line slipping through, especially up here because you'll lose the rest of your rig. All right, so now we got that tied, so we've got our braid to our fluorocarbon line right here. We're gonna go find the very end of our line right here, and we're gonna put that bobber through. Now, this float, what's really nice about the Addicted float is they give you little things that you can adjust. It's an inline float, so you can actually adjust it based on each hole that you're fishing. So they come with these little plastic pieces of tubing here, and all we're gonna do is we're gonna put both pieces of tubing through. We're gonna put one through here. Now we're gonna take our float, and there's actually a little hole that comes in this side, out this. So we're just gonna put that line through that hole here, and it'll pop out on the other side. You're just gonna grab it like that. You're gonna grab your other piece of tubing, and you're gonna run it in through like that. Now what you're gonna do is you're actually gonna take that tubing and you're gonna stick that on top of the float. So you're actually just gonna push that tubing over the top like that. And it's kind of tricky to get it on, but once you get that folded over the float, that float ain't going anywhere, which is really nice. You're gonna do that on the other side as well. Got that there. Now, what's nice about this setup is that tubing it's tight enough to where the bobber isn't gonna move when you cast, but it's still loose enough to where if you want to adjust this and you want to pull that line through, you can. And you can actually now adjust this based on every hole. So if you want your bobber from your worm to be only 3 feet, rig it up 3 feet. If you want it from, a 7-foot leader, just move it out 4 feet. So it's really adjustable, which is nice. All right, so we're gonna run that float up to that braid. Now that knot is gonna be a little bit tricky to go over. Sometimes you won't have to go over that knot, but as you see mine, that knot just kind of slid and it goes right through that tubing, no problem. So now it's into the braid. Now we're gonna get started on the next part of our leader here. Now the next part is something that a lot of people skip, but this is something I really love to do, and there's a lot of advantages to this, and I'll talk about it here in a minute. This right here is a super, super tiny barrel swivel. These are made by VMC. I know a couple other companies make them. The one I like the best as of now is VMC. These are just a super, super small barrel swivel, and we're gonna tie that barrel swivel on to the end of our line here. Now this gives a couple benefits to the setup. Number one, it's gonna hold your split shots, and they're not gonna move around a lot. The other thing is big trout like to spin and twist and turn, and I don't want my line twirling and curling, and that could potentially damage the line. That's what that swivel is there for, especially the worm as well. If you're fishing a worm and you're reeling it back in, that worm twirls and that can twist up your line really bad. So that swivel is getting rid of all those problems. Okay, got a improved clinch knot on there. I'm going to take our cutters, cut that, and now we are at here. So if you see, we've got that little barrel swivel on the end. It's very, very tiny. I'll get a close-up shot for you guys so you guys can see this a little bit better on the video. Luckily, I had another spool of tippet in my box, so we can make the next part of this rig here. We're gonna take another piece of that tippet, and we're gonna make it about a foot long. It can be a little bit more, 14 inch or so. And now we're gonna tie one of those sides onto your barrel swivel. So this rig should go, fluorocarbon, barrel swivel, fluorocarbon. Okay? Now we've got our barrel swivel on each side of the line. So you notice the short side is at the very end. And now what we're gonna do is we're gonna attach our hook. Now this all depends on what you're using here. If you're using a jig head, you would tie this on here. Wherever your bait is gonna be, this is where you're gonna tie it on. So today I'm gonna be using a combination of some soft beads by B&R. We're gonna be using some custom poured worms from a buddy of mine. These are like little fake 2-inch worms. And we're gonna be using some night crawlers and shrimp. So we're gonna be using a whole bunch of things under the float today. You can also use flies under the rig as well. But today, since we're using different types of baits and plastics, we're gonna be using just a plain hook. We're gonna be using the Owner mosquito hooks. These are one of my favorite hooks to use. There's a lot of brands of good hooks out there, but this is just one that I really like. This is a size 4, typically when I'm using bait, and I'm also on a river that these fish tend to really inhale the bait. I mean, they are not picky fish here. So I like to use a little bit bigger of a hook. That way, there's a less chance of them gut hooking it. It's gonna be easier for me to get out. We're gonna tie that hook on to the end of that rig there, right? And I'm just gonna use the same knot as before. I'm just gonna use like an improved clinch knot, which is also called the fisherman's knot. Okay, got that tied on right there. So we've got our hook, right? Now we are only missing one thing from this rig now, and that is gonna be our weight. So if you're fishing really shallow, you don't have to add any weight, especially if you have a little jig head on the end. But in today's case, we are fishing big, deep pools, so we are going to need some weight. These are just some cheap Eagle Claw split shots. There's a lot of brands of split shots out there. Doesn't really matter which one you use. I will have every single piece of this rig in the description below, so you guys can literally go on Amazon and just add every single one of those things to your list and order it. It also helps me out a little bit too. I get some commissions on that, so I'm very appreciative to those of you that help me out. Okay, now where we place the split shots is crucial here. We want to put it, if there's the hook, right, we want to put it behind the barrel swivel, so onto that longer leader. And the reason why is because the split shots are going to want to move down. But that's the point, is if we have that barrel swivel there, those split shots can't move anywhere. They stop right in front of that barrel swivel. They can't go anywhere. So that's why I put them right there. We're just I'm gonna put 2 on to start here today. We're gonna put this right here. You can use pliers. Shouldn't use your teeth, but I'm doing it. Got that there. I actually don't think that's enough weight for the hole I'm fishing right now, so we're gonna add another one on. The nice thing about these ones is they have the little removable piece on the end, so I can take them on and off depending on the hole. I can also adjust my bobber up and down depending on the hole as well. So that's the rig right there, right? So we've got our float, we've got our leader line down, we've got our split shot, barrel swivel, more leader, and our hook. And at this point, you can put on whatever bait you want and get out to fishing. So now that we got all rigged up, let's go get one. All right, this hole right here is pretty deep, so we're gonna adjust our leader even farther up. So this right here is probably about 7 feet. Now, if you guys notice in this hole, right, this is kind of your textbook hole. You have your real fast water up top. Then you kind of get into kind of the money. For me, right through here is kind of that money stretch all throughout in there. And then some of my favorite water as well is that big deep stuff right out in there. Typically your biggest fish are going to be right out in this hole right in here. That's going to be kind of your deepest, slowest water. That's your prime spot for a fish to want to sit. So of course the big fish are always going to get the prime, best of the best spots. Now, although this is true for most rivers, it is especially true for this river I'm fishing today. A lot of the smaller fish are going to be on your edges of the water column. I'm typically hooking my bigger fish out in the middle. So it's something to think about, right? If you're just trying to catch fish all different parts of the water column. However, if you're trying to target those if you just want big fish, sit right there in that deep water and be patient, because there is going to be a big fish in a hole like this. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. That's a good fish. Oh man. That fish screamed. Oh my goodness. Woo. That's a better fish. I haven't even seen him yet. Oh yeah. Beautiful. God, those big wild rainbows just fight so incredibly hard. Oh, look at him. Oh yeah. Beautiful, beautiful fish. Awesome. What a fish. Come here. Oh, beautiful, beautiful fish. Oh my goodness. Yes. Oh, folks. Gorgeous, gorgeous rainbow. Absolutely stunning fish. Oh my goodness. There he goes. Oh gosh. Oh, good fish. Good fish. Oh. Oh, oh my gosh. As bummed as I am to lose that fish, that is so freaking cool to see. Oh, that was cool. Oh, I mean, there's nothing I can do on that fish when he jumps like that. Oh, that was cool though. Dang, I wanted to get him. That was a nice fish. Holy smokes, these fish are so fast. Oh, he's pretty. Another gorgeous, gorgeous fish. Send him on his way. If you guys enjoyed this video, you're also gonna love the 2 videos up here. I'm glad I got to show you guys my in-depth tutorial. Sucks we didn't get that big one, but that's all right. He's in there for next time. So hope you guys enjoyed. See you guys next time on Humbug Videos.